Well, hey, good morning. We're here in my kitchen with my lovely wife, Laurel. And the reason we're standing here is because Laurel and I, we're preppers at heart. You know, that's something we had in common from the very, very beginning. And as a mom and as somebody who thinks about things I don't think about, because she's, I'm thinking about guns and bullets and that sort of thing. She's got a mind going another direction, and thank God for it. So Laurel's here because she's the one that brought this thing to us. And I just kind of want to talk about this particular prep that I believe until now you couldn't get, and most people need in some way, shape, or form, at least most Americans. And it's a certain prep that some people, if they didn't have it, they would just die. And it's the first time it's been offered that I'm aware of in the world. And you're the one that brought this. So I just want to kind of let you talk to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So first of all, we are not talking about the Jase case, which we talked about, supply of critical antibiotics. And I think, so that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to do this video, is the fact that in reading some of the comments when we talked to you originally about this new offering called Jase Daily, which centers around 12-month supply for chronic medications. In the comments, it felt like a lot of people really were not understanding. They were thinking we were talking about the Jase case. We were talking about antibiotics.
Yeah.
And that's not what this is. While still incredibly important, and we can talk about that in a second, really, to me, this Jase Daily, the ability to have a 12-month supply of chronic medications for your heart issues, for thyroid, for high blood pressure, for diabetes, pain management, antidepressants, mental health issues, for all of those things, some of which can have very severe consequences pretty quickly if you are not able to get access to those medications. To me, this is one of the single most important things, that if you rely, or a member of your family relies on those medications to stay as healthy as possible, you absolutely have to listen to this video. And I think most of us either personally or have someone in our lives who do rely on those medications. So just, to back up for a second, we did a video a couple months ago with Jase Medical about their Jase case, which was the ability to get a supply of 7 of the most common antibiotics, so you could have a supply
prescribed by a doctor. Now, let me add to that, because see, a lot of people like us, because before that was available, we had fish antibiotics. A lot of people say, get fish antibiotics.
Which I didn't feel great about.
No, I know you didn't. But this is obviously a better case, because with the antibiotics, you have antibiotics to cure most things with proper dosing from a medical doctor based on who you are, your body weight, everything. Whereas, and that's not what this is. And a lot of people think we're talking about it. This is things like, my mother needs her, she just had heart surgery like a week ago. Like, of course if just the electricity went out and the pharmacy couldn't get supplied, a lot of people prep for an end of war or an end of a world type of scenario, but you're in the medical field, and, we're facing major supply issues. And if you had diabetes and you couldn't get your diabetes medicine or your insulin or whatever the case may be, because there was a storm and the shipping couldn't come through, or, whatever the case may be, most people would go into a diabetic coma and maybe not come out of it.
Right. Well, and even high blood pressure. One of the most common, they say now about 80% of adult Americans have either diagnosed or undiagnosed high blood pressure. High blood pressure untreated is the #1 cause of heart attack and stroke, and critically important. And if you're not getting that medication, can have severe impacts on your health. I think so often they're thinking simply about if we have a disaster scenario. Here's why you need to pay attention right now. We have seen since the start of the pandemic, and we're going to go into the interview with Dr. Sean Rowland, who I had the opportunity to interview, who actually founded Jase Medical and why, but it was founded during the pandemic when he saw these issues with supply chain. And for example, right now, if you just look, this isn't obviously one of the medications that Jase offers, but if you Google right now, shortage of oncology drugs, you will see there's a critical supply shortage happening right now because there's one plant in India that happens to produce almost 50% of the world's supply of this drug. It got shut down for quality control reasons, and now people, the medication is just very, very quickly becoming not accessible.
And all sorts of medical things. If not that, you have baby formula and the next thing and the next thing. I mean, if you're on a chronic med that you need to take every day or, daily, and you have a year's supply, it just takes that sense
stress,
of like
that anxiety.
Well, if for some reason I can't, there is a shortage of this right now, but that's okay because I have a year's supply of it.
Right. And here's a very...
And it is, I'm just going to add this last thing. It is the first time this is offered.
Right. I mean,
Very first time this is offered in anywhere in the world that I'm aware of.
Exactly. And here's the reason why you really need to pay attention right now. So August 1st, 2023, there's a pending UPS Teamsters strike. If they are not able to reach an agreement, they supply medications. They actually have a division, UPS Healthcare, that supplies globally like 950 manufacturing production sites all over the world that get us our medication. So much of our medication is not produced anywhere in the US. And that very quickly, in just a matter of like 6 weeks or so, I guess about 8 weeks, could within a matter of a couple of weeks mean you would not have access to your medications. And so I think that's just critically important to understand.
Absolutely. So this is a great opportunity because Laurel interviewed Dr. Sean Rowland. So take some time, listen. It's just going to answer all your questions if you have any. But this isn't just, they do offer a year's supply of antibiotics, but this is so much more than ever.
They are running a Memorial Day special code, Memorial Day 2023. We'll put that below, but that's good through May 29th, which would help you save some money on both, I believe, either the Jase Daily or the Jase case. And also the link we will put below will take you to their homepage so you can look at both options. If you're interested.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and also for giving us the opportunity to be one of the first to share about the new chronic meds that you were offering. So as we get ready to start, what I would love to do first is, would you mind just explaining a little bit even how Jase came about, the idea for, first of all, the emergency antibiotics, which we've already talked about and shared with our viewers, but what the impetus was for that, the need you saw, and why you created this company?
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. We love any chance we get to help get the word out, and you've got a great platform here to do that. And so we're grateful for the opportunity. Thanks for having us. As far as how Jase got started, really it traces its origins back to kind of pre-pandemic days. I was working in a community hospital at the time on a border town, and just your regular, could have been anywhere USA in any hospital. And at the time, we were dealing already at that time with shortages of medications, sometimes supplies, but oftentimes vital medications. These were things we used every day on the inpatient service, antibiotics and others. And so, of course, this struck me at the time as being just so strange because, you remember pre-pandemic, we just didn't really deal with a lot of supply chain issues. It wasn't something we dealt with, certainly in our daily lives, I think, to any wide degree. So that was just weird to me, and I didn't understand it. And I started doing some of my own research and reading and digging into some of this, and can come to find out that we are basically wholly dependent on overseas pharmaceutical production. All of our meds, especially when you're talking about generic meds, which account for over 90% of what's prescribed in the U.S., that all of them come from overseas, and most of them could ultimately trace in one form or another the involvement of China. There's other manufacturers out there, India, Europe, but for the most part, those active pharmaceutical ingredients come out of China. And so that was an eye opener for me and concerning. And then during the pandemic, of course, everything fell apart, right? We stopped seeing patients in the clinic. We were going 100% telemedicine. And I will say, as far as Jase is concerned, this was in a way a good thing, as far as it helped the public to adopt telemedicine as a viable means of healthcare delivery, not just the public, but it also helped states, legislators, lawmakers also be okay with it. And so we've got all this going on in the pandemic. I made the interesting decision to start a new practice at the height of the pandemic, moved my family back to where we are originally from, and started a new practice. And that helped me see kind of behind the curtain the true cost of medications and how much these generic meds really do cost. And ultimately what I did was I needed to get my practice outfitted for my patients. We're in the middle of the pandemic. The winter was coming on where we were going to have the flu and COVID and a lot of unknowns, a lot of worry. So I got myself well supplied. And of course, the reaction I had to that was, well, that's great, but what about my neighbors, my families, my friends, my loved ones who are vulnerable? Because I truly felt and still feel that we are really vulnerable when it comes to, we're vulnerable in all kinds of ways in all different industries, but there are few that touch our lives as dramatically as access to healthcare, access to medications. And so that's what led really to the formation of JACE, finding out how can we do this on a bigger scale, not just for me and my patients, but for the public at large. And so that was how JACE got started.
And with your emergency antibiotics, first of all, I will say my background's in healthcare communications. And so having gone through a pandemic, very well aware of what that was like and how challenging that was, especially for our physicians. So thank you to you for that. With your emergency antibiotics, the JACE case, first of all, what kind of reaction have you had from people for that? I know when we shared the video, our video, that I think a lot of people felt like this has been a need that we've seen, worried about for so long, and thank goodness there is now finally this option there. But I was just curious overall what sort of response you've seen.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting when you tell someone I think I put them in maybe 2 or 3 camps. So you've got those people who were ready and waiting. They didn't need to be, it was just as soon as you told them that this was available, they were there, right? That was easy. And then you've got some of these people who maybe because of the pandemic started to realize that maybe it was prudent to at least have some degree of preparation, in whatever that meant to them. And then you've got the other camp who just really has no idea that this is even something to be concerned about, why it might. So you've got those 3 people. But anytime you tell them, here's what JACE is about, here's why we're doing it, they all immediately apply it quickly. It's always just immediately to their lives, where they think of a specific instance. Maybe they're not preppers at all. Maybe they were just traveling in Hawaii, for example, on a remote part of the island, and there was no clinic there. The pharmacy was hours away, and they got cut on some coral and it got infected. I've had those kinds of patients. Maybe it was, and actually a couple of interesting stories. Maybe I'll tell you 1 or 2, but because these are just reflective, I think, of the response that we've gotten. A previous patient of mine, I'm not actively, my clinic is, I'm no longer seeing patients anymore in that clinic. And so this was a previous patient of the clinic who called me talking about how she had a dental procedure done earlier in the week. And I think it was a Friday. It was coming up on the weekend. I know that. And she just was in a lot of pain and things seemed to be getting worse. And she had this tooth extracted. And so I asked, well, are you on antibiotics? Sure. Yeah. The dentist put me on these antibiotics. Well, have you talked to your dentist? Well, I tried, but he's out of town and the office it's really hard to get a hold of him, get any answers. And she described her symptoms to me. And I said, well, you've obviously, the antibiotics you're taking aren't the right ones. Number 1. Number 2, you need to get on a more appropriate antibiotic. Luckily, she had a JACE case. So do you remember the JACE case that we talked about, that she was kind of one of these early customers, right? And sure, she's got it there. Well, you have your Augmentin, you have your amoxicillin, clavulanate in that pack. That's what you should be taking. You need to start taking that right away. And then you need to go in and get in and see a dentist or an oral surgeon as soon as you can. Of course, we're in the weekend, you're not going to be able to. So come Monday, you need to get seen no matter what. If anything, if anything worse happens over the weekend, you need to go to the hospital. So she did that. She started taking the medications. She went in and saw was able to get into an oral surgeon on that following Monday, and come to find out she had a horrible infection. The extraction had just nothing had gone well. And he commented to her, "You're on the right antibiotic. It's great. I'm so glad that you were able to start that. You probably would have ended up in the hospital had you delayed any longer." So that's just someone who there was nothing going on as far as I guess she had a little difficulty accessing her dentist, but this was just any run of the mill weekend, right?
Right.
And those, we could spend the rest of the time talking about different stories, but I guess it all ultimately, to directly answer your question, the response has been really positive, just overwhelmingly positive. One of those things that people say, why is this finally, this should have been happening a long time ago.
Right. That's what I thought when I heard it. I was like, finally, to have this. And to your point, you don't necessarily have to be thinking of some doomsday scenario. There are so many applications
Exactly.
for reasons why it would be so important, so critical to have the Jace case on hand. And then, one of the things that I thought about was a gap, which you are now getting ready to fill with your next product launch, which I think is really
Exactly.
exciting. So can you tell us
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So our mission, we're on a mission to empower everyone to be better prepared medically. Being better prepared medically it encompasses a lot, and everyone's situation is a little bit different and unique. We started the mission. We identified antibiotics as something that really applied to everybody, or could apply to everybody, and was a way to kind of start that mission. The logical next step, and one that we identified early on, and certainly has been highly requested from our patients, is the ability to do something similar for chronic conditions. So if you're someone with high blood pressure, with diabetes, thyroid disorders, we go down the list, high cholesterol, seizures, it just goes on and on, right? And you're taking a medication on a daily basis. You're dependent on that medication, and that medication fits right in with the category I said before, which is that of generic medication produced overseas. Now, there are some we call them designer or brand name drugs that some people are taking for conditions like maybe rheumatoid arthritis, and some others. This service specifically is for those generic medications, where what we're doing is saying, okay, if you meet certain criteria where we know we're not going to diagnose you with a new condition. We're not going to start a new medication that you haven't taken before. You've been taking this and proven that you're safe taking it, that it's dosed appropriately, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so you've met this criteria that we've established with our physicians. And if we can meet those criteria, then the physicians feel comfortable providing you up to a year's supply of medication. This doesn't mean you get a year's worth of refills, because that's typically what you'd get now, is you'd get maybe a 30-day supply or a 90-day supply with X number of refills. We are going to supply you with 365 days of that medication, for the same reasons that we do it for antibiotics, for the supply chain issues. It's one of those things that I hate to see. But it's also it's like, well, this is why we're in business. When you see, we had one of our medical writers, she's a registered nurse, that lives up near Buffalo, New York. And a couple of weeks ago, I got an email in my inbox from her saying, "Hey, I just want you to know that up here in Buffalo, people can't get out of their homes, nor can ambulances get to their homes. Women are giving birth at home. People can't go to their checkups, can't go to the pharmacy to get refills, and can't have the refills delivered to them." And we could be talking about even more currently, you've got flooding in California. It's always something, right?
Right.
So having that access in your house, having it there, it's just prudent. It's just something that I think we can now leverage the technology advancements that we have with telemedicine, so that we can do this appropriately, safely, and make it available to everybody.
When I think, the pandemic, definitely one of the phrases it definitely taught us and made us all appreciate is supply chain, something that I think most of us had never thought about before, but it
Right.
really highlighted just how dependent the whole world is on a few suppliers for various things, and then how quickly all of that can come grinding to a halt. And, some of these medications on that list make you healthier. Some are potentially life-saving, depending on the situation you're in and
Right.
your need. And
Right.
so, and I can think of so many scenarios I never want to be in, but where it would be so critical if you're dependent on one of those medications
Yeah.
to have it. Um, One of the things you touched on that I'd love to highlight is the fact that you have a medical team. You have, like, this is a well thought out team and process, and this isn't, you're going online, have no idea who you're talking to, trying to get a prescription somewhere. So I just wanted you to speak a little bit
Yeah.
to the quality controls you have.
That's a really important part of what we do. We are not an online pharmacy where you just come and pick and choose what you want. It's much more than that. It's paired with the physician who is reviewing your individual history and needs. We try and keep it to a limited scope. We're not equipped at this time to replace your doctor. We're not putting ourselves out there as a replacement for your primary care doctor. But we are putting ourselves out there to help augment that care and to fill some gaps. And so that's an important consideration. And like, as to your point, what that means is we've put a lot of resources and effort into when it comes to our physician network. You're seen by a board certified physician. When it comes to the support afterwards, you're able to contact us at any time, and if it's needed, we will forward that request to the physician to get an answer for you. We're dedicating a lot more resources, and you'll see some coming changes here pretty soon when it comes to our website and how kind of how much information is presented there as a repository for a lot of information about medical conditions and medications. So education is also a big part of what we're doing. And that's all part of this overall mission. I think that empowerment is not just having a bunch of pills at your house. You need to know what they are, how to use them, when to use them, when not to use them. There's a reason why they're prescription medications. And so that empowerment also includes just that education component, which is also really important. And again, to reiterate what you said, is to have the trust that you are being attended to very, very purposefully and thoughtfully. Not just someone out there taking some meds off the shelf and then we wave goodbye to you.
Right. I think from everything I've seen, very impressive. I'm very impressed with what you have set up and the way you're structured and organized. I think people can really have a great sense of peace of mind, because when it comes to, I think our health is one of those things. It does not matter who you are, our health, our physical condition, that impacts every single one of us. And to know that you're able to get the medication that you need and that you can trust the company, the doctors providing it to you. And I understand you also fill through US pharmacies. Is that correct?
Yeah. So and all of so we've got pharmacies here in the United States for our US customers. We have pharmacies in Canada for those customers, and we're working on opening up other countries as well. But yeah, here in the US, it's a licensed board certified physician who's licensed in your whichever state you're coming from. And same for the pharmacies. The pharmacies have to be licensed to dispense medications in whichever state they're sending those to. So there's a lot of checks and balances here, a lot of processes in place, and we pride ourselves in following all of those and doing everything as above board as possible.
Well, so last question, I guess, really, what steps do people go through to be able to do this?
So what do we need to do in order to take advantage of our services? We've got, we kind of divided into those two categories. That's the antibiotics, where you're after either the Jase case, and we're expanding beyond just what those 5 antibiotics are. In fact, right now, we're adding medications every week, and we're getting ready to, hopefully after this chronic medication launch, we'll be following that up with a bigger launch of expanded emergency medication options.
Wonderful.
But we divide those two. So you've got your kind of emergency medications, emergency use medications, and then you have your daily medications in the chronic chronic conditions. So when you come to the site, you can go to there. You'll see all over the site where it says, go ahead and order now. And that will quickly determine, are you trying to get antibiotics, or do you have a chronic condition that you're looking to get a supply for? And it'll just take you through our form that will ask those appropriate questions depending on which scenario you're in. If you are looking for meds in a certain condition, then you'll get a couple of extra questions based on that condition. It's a fairly straightforward questionnaire that will ask just the pertinent things that the doctor needs to know. Like I said before, we want to make sure that these medications, that this isn't a new condition, that you've taken them for the appropriate amount of time without changes in dosage. And not every single medication lends itself to this process. We've done our best to hit the most the most highly demanded ones, the ones that are most common. But I would say the process is really similar to those who have already gone through and done the antibiotics. It's very similar. It's some basic questions. It's maybe a little bit more involved, but overall it doesn't take very much time, and goes to the physician. If the physician has any questions, they'll reach out and potentially, and get those questions answered if they have any. But we've tried to set the system up so that you know what to expect. You've got up front, you can see, here's what this is going to cost me. Okay, that sounds good. I want to keep going. And you go all the way through the end to send it off to the physician. There's a chance the physician might say no. In that case, we might work with you to let you know what you can do to change that. If it's having a discussion with your primary doctor or whatever the case may be. And then ultimately that order gets sent off to the pharmacy and gets delivered the same as our Jace case does today. Again, try to make it streamlined, try to make it easy. Try to avoid having to wait for appointments between you and the doctor. Now, in some states, that just has to happen. But for the most part, we're able to do all of this in a pretty streamlined way, pretty pain-free.
Well, that's wonderful. And we will put links to the website in our video so that people can easily click and get exactly where they need to go. But I think this is really exciting. I think it's greatly needed. And so I expect and wish you great success with it, because I think you really are doing a huge public service. So thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks again for the opportunity. We encourage everyone to tell their family, tell their friends. This is just something that should be kind of general knowledge out there. Even if they don't have to come to Jace, we'd love it if they would. We've tried to make it as easy and convenient and cost effective as we can. If someone trusts their own primary doctor, and has a great relationship with them and wants to do it that way, by all means, because like I said, I think at the end of the day, it's about empowerment. It's about being prepared, not just for that, horrible doomsday scenario, but just for what any life can throw at any of us. And so that's my mission, is to encourage people to take action that way. We've tried our best to offer them an easy solution, but at the end of the day, as long as they do it, then we're happy.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I think as
welcome.
the last couple of years have taught us, we have no idea what life may throw at us
100%.
at any time.